Welcome everybody, Classic from Austria. Today I want to talk about error logging and how you can support your internal communication department or product owner or product manager with some logging informations. Quite a lot of applications nowadays are written as single page applications. So a SharePoint framework solution is a single page application, and when you host it in as Teams tab, for example, in Teams, it's also a single page application. So the main things are made in the client or on the client in the browser. I'm taking a look at some samples and issues, and they are really simplified to explain it easier. So in the first thing is I received the email from Susan Baker, and she tells me that our CAO has a big problem with our onboarding site. This is a default template from the SharePoint, and I added one little thing. I added a web part here, and what we can see in the screenshot, something went wrong. So what is the first reaction you can do? You can go to the page and check it if it's working for you. And as expected, it is working. So the next thing is maybe your colleague, hey, can you try this site? Is it working? And he will give you also the other answer that it works great. So you have a problem with one special user. So the good thing is we have here an error boundary here. So you see when something went wrong, we write something went wrong on the screen. But do you see it already? Where do we log the errors? We write it into the console. So who can see the errors? Only the user in front of the PC, or can only see it in the browser. So for this, you have maybe to make a call to your CIO and say, hey, can you open the DevTools and can we make a screenshot, or can we make a remote session? I think this would be the best call you have ever. Unfortunately, I have managed to get the screenshot, and I see we make a graph call, and we get as return 404. It means file not found. So is this an implementation error, or what's wrong here? Maybe I can use another endpoint. So I say expand to manager, but also for this, when I've done it in another way, I would get another error, but I will get an error. So how to avoid such code in future? The simplest way is, hey, I'm a dev, so I can write an endpoint where we can send over the logs inside, write the short function, send logs to log server, and everything is good. But think about, you have to write also an Azure function, for example, and store the post message into a document DB or in a storage account. And maybe in future you want to have alerts, or you want to have reporting. So we are in the Microsoft 365 environment. So our favorite cloud provider is maybe Azure. I hope so. And in Azure, you have a really nice service that's called Application Insight. And for the hardcore developer, here is the bicep code, so you can provision this service. So what you have to do, it's not a big deal. You have to install a node package. It's npm minus Microsoft / Application Insight Web. And you have to integrate it. With some lines of code, you can add everything. You have only to add a connection string and say load Application Insight, and you are finished to set up your application that you get log information, especially for requests. When you want to send custom logs, write the function and say, okay, in the function when its log level is verbose, send it to as trace to the Application Insight. And this was it. You have only to bind this function to your control, and you can write nice logs. So I have tried it, and I've made the first log complement mounted, and I write it here. So in the service, you see everything. Let's look at real time, we have here the PMPJS is now in version 4 available, and I mainly use PMPJS. So there you can use the the interface. It's the log listener, and you have only to implement one function. It's called log, and here I write the messages. In this sample, I write it in the error. But what we can see is I write everything in the exception log. Does it make sense? Maybe this is better. Talk with your colleagues when you use a logging service, how to log the messages. If you log everything in the table A or in the table B, it depends on you. For me, it's more important that every developer in your organization make the same thing, because when you have to support another code, you should find where the logs are stored. So, and for the PMPJS, you have only say logger, give, subscribe this. And for me, I also give the console listener every time to the logger, because during development, it's easier to open the browser and the dev console and you get everything. In the last line, what is highlighted, you can say which log level is interesting for you. So in this sample on the screen, the debug level will not be submitted to application inside and also not in the console. So, and here we have one thing more. I set an authenticated user context. Why I do this is I want to know which user has this done. But please take care. In some organizations, it's not allowed to do it in plain text. Maybe you have to hash it. Please, in organization, talk to your work council if what is allowed and how you can use it. So in PMPJS, I made some action buttons and I write some logs. It's not a big sample, so you can click on the buttons and the logs are transmitted to application inside. And here it is. And the only thing on the left-hand side, you see you have exception and you have traces. And with a small query, exceptions, in this, I have all the clicks. Good. Let's jump to another thing. I have here a web part. This web part has items, and you have the possibility to add the items. On the one side, you can add the items on the bottom side, or on the top, I have an command bar with one action, add item. So, and the question is, which action does the user use? Does the user use the action on the bottom or on the top? So on the event on save, added application inside track event, and I gave them a name. And the top, add item context menu, and on the bottom, add item web part context. So I know in the log which user has used which action. So now we get the results. In this case, we get the results under the custom events because we have submitted an event. So let's take a look at one log item. On the top, we have the name. You can find directly the name, what we have set in the application. On the other hand, we have on the bottom, you see, I use a browser on Mac, and you see my location is in Upper Austria, and the city is Linz. And what you see here is that the IP address is masked. So by default, application inside masks the IP address from the user. You can say disable IP masking of true, and you can see the IP address of the service provider. So, and on here, you see the authentication context. You can write me some ways. I will not answer it. It's a dev tenant. So I will ignore the mails. So when we go back to our custom events, you see I have quite a lot of events here, and only some events are now interesting for me, which user has clicked on which button. So I added some in the telemetry initializer, I added some lines of code to identify my web part and to have it easier when we log more web parts and more solutions into the same application inside. So I can use it. So I extend the query and say the role name should be my solution, and the role instance is, for this example, my web part. And now I have only the events what is used in this web part. So it is a nice list, but I want to have a report. I want to show it to somebody. I want to show it to my manager and say, hey, I want to get rid of one functionality. So I can extend it and say, I'm only interested in events that are starting with add item. This is for my web part. And in line 5, I only want to show in the last 10 hours how the people have used this. And then as I summarize and count. So, and yeah, I want to see it in a bar chart, then it's easier to make it in a presentation for your product owner. And I see only one user has used the context menu, all other use the web part context. So in my opinion, the first reaction would be remove it from the command bar. Nobody use it. I don't want to support this code anymore. So the same thing is what is about when you have a bigger web part or you have multiple pages, how you can monitor this. So I use in the web part a router, and I use the hash router. I have 3 pages and 1 start page here implemented. And the only thing to get information about this is it goes back to my application inside initialization and add, yes, we in React, we add the React plugin, we say enable auto route tracking and also auto track page visit time, because we want to know how long a user is on the page. And then we have only to say track page view. It is so easy as it looks. So in the page tracking, I can I clicked around and get some data, and I said, okay, to see the same pattern, I want to have the page views starting with page, because contains page, start page, page 1, page 2, and page 3 are also included page, and I want to have it for this web part, and I want to have the report from the last 8 hours, and I summarize everything and make a bar chart. So I see that the pages are used and so on. But we had a second options that we have also the visit time. And so let's make another query. It's this matrix are stored in the custom matrix. And then I say, okay, I want to see the page visit time, summarize it, and I want the average from the how long a user was on the page. And I see the page 3, the users read the most. Start page on page 1 is not interesting really for the users. So, and the next thing, what also is possible in application inside, I can have a user flow. So I see I have 6 sessions on the start page. Then the main of the users, 4 sessions go to page 2, and only 1 goes back to the start page. Why? I don't know. And page 1 is also only used. So you see the complete flow of the users. So for this web part, it's a demonstration. But what's really interesting is when you have a page and you want to track everything what the user used in the SharePoint site. So you can also track the pages, and we have here it before. There are tons of samples already existing, and 2 extensions already exist that you can use and implement. The only thing what you have to take care is think about how you handle the user, and maybe you have to extend one of the samples to say, I want to have the department or the company also in this result set in the item, because then I can say, okay, this department uses this path and the other department uses more this path, and so on. And when you provide this to your internal communication department, they're really happy. The only thing is maybe it's a little bit complicated to see it in the application inside directly. And we have another sample in the sample gallery, so you can see the page visits on the web part. You can give it to a SharePoint site, and the users can use it. And when it's on a SharePoint site, you can also integrate it on Teams. So let's jump to another issue. It's a really good issue because application is sometimes slow. Sometimes it's really nice to test. What does it mean? Are the requests slow? So let's take a look what Application Insight provides you. You have on the left-hand side workbooks, and there are some predefined queries. And I would say, let's try one. This one is, I want to have the average duration of a request. And when I look at this one, it looks pretty good because the main of the requests are under 150 milliseconds. So I think this is not a problem why we are slow. The next thing is, do we have any application errors or do we have HTTP errors in the log? Let's take a look at the log, and I say request summarize the count of the result count. And what I see here, we have a ton of good requests. This is the 200, but we have some requests with 429. What does 429 mean? Too many requests. So the application we made is resilient against 429 because we don't have any application error. It's only slow. So in this reason, I think you should think about in your application about patching because you make so many requests. The 429 error is sometimes really hard to find because it's maybe not your application, it's another application, and then the request limit is slower. So this is one hard area you find, is hard to find. But when it's not your application, you have the possibility to say, hey, I want to have an alert as soon as I have a 429 error on my tenant. So we go into the application insights, we use the alert feature, we create a new alert. In my example, I use a custom query. In the custom query, say I want to have the request that contains a result code of 429. And I want to say when I have more than 2 errors in 1 hour, I want to get an email. So it's easy, straightforward to configure. It's click, 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 like Microsoft every time. Click, 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 and you are finished. And so on. So on the developer side, you can also use application insights in the environment. Because when you make an application, and quite a lot of people are currently working on it, it's maybe not so good to make an update. So you can make queries and say, how is the usage currently? Should I make an update in my CI/CD pipeline? And also for Power Apps, in Power Apps, you can also enter the instrumentation key in your application, and then you get the log information out of Power Apps, and you have a central point. You can make alerts, you can make reports. Maybe this will change in future instrumentation key to connection string, but I don't know. What is missing? One buzzword we had today, it's Copilot. When you think about, you write a Copilot plugin. In the Copilot plugin, it's a Microsoft Teams message extensions, and it's based on the bot framework. And also in the bot framework, you can integrate application insight. You get the prompts. So, and I think I have covered all things. Please take a look at application insight. Take also a look of dev proxy. The 429 errors are generated with the dev proxy. And here on the slide, you find also the web parts.